I want to talk about what you said earlier about Jesus on the cross being a ransom paid not to God, but from God to death. And again, I'm going to quote a passage and I will just let you please talk on that, because that is something that I find so prevalent in the Christian church or in what I'm hearing. And I just found your take so refreshing and an invitation to go back to, again, what the early Christians believed. And so I'm going to read from one of your chapters called The Harrowing of Hell. And you say there, the church fathers always spoke of the ransom being paid to death or to the devil as a personification of death. Early Christian preachers were fond of speaking to the death of Christ, as a kind of trick played on the devil. They spoke of the flesh of Christ as the bait on the hook of divinity. Because Jesus was mortal, he could be swallowed by death, but death could not digest divinity. The devil took the bait and swallowed the hook. Once divinity was swallowed by death, death itself became ill and doomed to die. And then you go on to talk about John Chrysostom, whom I really admire greatly. And so tell us how the fact that Jesus is this ransom paid to death, to abolish death, not to God. Why is this so essential?
So the early church, they wouldn't have used the language of atonement theory. That would not be there. That's a modern take on it. But they did use metaphors to talk about how the cross saves us. And by far, their most common one is a metaphor that's actually drawn from Scripture. Jesus himself says, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. And then there's some ransom language also in the book of Revelation. So this was their most common thing, but somewhere along the way in modernity, we got confused. And it has to do, well, I'm not going to say what it has to do. I'm going to be nice about it. But we somehow began to imagine that Jesus is paying God, as if God were our abductor, as if God were the kidnapper, as if God were the problem, as if God were the enemy. None of that's true. You don't pay. In fact, the Father is paying the ransom through the Son to
in full agreement within the Trinity, right? And Jesus isn't the victim, right? The wholeness and the holistic harmony of the Trinity. Jesus is in full agreement with the Father. He's not the helpless victim either. So this ransom is from the Father through the Son by the Spirit in full accordance of the Trinity on behalf of mankind to death. Sorry.
Exactly. So ransom is paid to the kidnapper. You don't pay it to yourself. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. And so it's paid, but it was also a trick. Because yes, death could take Jesus because he is fully human, that is mortal, that is subject to death. But never forget, Jesus is also fully divine, fully God. And once divinity enters into death, it enters not as a captive, but as a conqueror. And that's why Paul works creatively with Psalm 68, imports it there and into Ephesians 4, and says that Christ went into the realm of captivity and made it his captivity and led it forth into liberation. By the way, this is set forth, since you like C.S. Lewis, this is Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Aslan. Yes.
This is Aslan being a ransom for Edmund, but it didn't just liberate Edmund, it liberated all of Narnia because of the deeper magic that broke the stone table. And I mean, in other writings, C.S. Lewis tells you that's what he's doing. He is actually working with this ancient patristic theory of atonement, because that's what Lewis liked. And that's why he put that in there.
And the way Aslan describes it to Lucy, he says, if you had been there before the foundation of the world, you would know of the deeper magic that rules beyond that even the White Witch didn't know about, because Satan had maybe not even yet been created when that deeper magic was established into the fabric of the universe and of reality. So basically, the way you're saying it is Jesus behaved like a Trojan horse, and I'm quoting you there. And that's powerful. You also make a very interesting analogy to Men in Black.
Well, look, I can work with C.S. Lewis. I can work with Chrysostom and ancient, preaching metaphors and hymns. But sometimes you just want to work with contemporary movies because that's what people know, and I'm a pastor. And so think about uh, the movie Men in Black. I know it's been, there's sequels and redone. I'm talking about just the original one with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. And there's that moment, the climactic moment of the movie, when the bug, this galactic cockroach, as Tommy Lee Jones calls it, they're confronting it. And Tommy Lee Jones says, "Eat me, eat me." He's taunting death, the bug. And this giant alien cockroach swallows him. And we think, oh, that's the end of that, of Agent, whatever. I can't remember their initials, but Tommy Lee Jones. That's the end of him. But it wasn't, because he went down into, let's say it this way, he went down into the belly of hell,
The
into the
belly of a
belly of the
fish.
cockroach,
Hmm.
retrieved his weapon. That's activating his divinity. And if you want to, do the Christian side of it, and destroys the bug from the inside out. That is, I know they weren't trying to do that, but this is the way the early church understood how Jesus destroyed death. He allowed himself to be swallowed, goes down into the belly of the whale or the belly of hell, into death, but there activates his divinity, this weapon, and destroys death from the inside out, that he might liberate humanity.
Hmm. Hmm. Well,
So
so much
so so
for.
anybody that watches, anybody that just heard this podcast and then someday in the future rewatches Men in Black, you'll get to that moment, you go, oh man, there's like theology here.